The rapid pace with which Russia is seeking to modernize her military forces and weapons, combined with the increasingly aggressive stance of the Russian military, including Russian aircraft around the sovereign airspace of NATO member states, are all significant causes for concern. So we're in familiar territory for anyone over the age of about 50, with Russia's aggressive behavior a stark reminder that it has the potential to pose the single greatest threat to our security.
As we focus on a warring Congress, a small town in Missouri being ripped anew with demonstrations, a band of mental midget frat boys who have shown us once again a dark side of ourselves we all too often seek to ignore, we cannot allow ourselves to stray for too long from what is happening overseas and the pain one man is inflicting on others merely to feed a monstrous, egotistical soul. Let's welcome to MidPoint former Hungarian ambassador to the United States and NATO. As a 4-year-old, he watched as the Soviet tanks rolled into his village as part of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. Now the managing director of the Center for Transatlantic Relations at Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C., András Simonyi joins us. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We tell that story and I say that line. You saw the tanks come into your village when you were a child. There are people today here in 2015 who cannot imagine that happening today. They consider this a civilized planet, a civilized society, and they can't even think of the possibility of that. But are we not looking at something so close to that revolution, that time, and that sort of Russian aggression when we look at what Vladimir Putin is doing right now in Ukraine?
You're exactly right. This is, for me, a deja vu situation. Thank God my country and many former Soviet satellites are in NATO today. But just imagine what would happen to us if we weren't. And I'd also, like people to think about, we have put ourselves to sleep after the changes of 89, 90. We have kind of created a comfort zone, and we just don't seem to want to acknowledge the fact that there is a major challenge, if not a threat, from Russia to our democratic way of life.
What is stopping us then from coming to the realization that this is a madman, this is a dictator who is not afraid to pull the same kind of triggers that would have been pulled back in the 1950s? Why can't we, as civilized people, get ourselves to understand that point?
Well, there are a couple of things. One is I'm worried about the divide between Europe and the United States. I'm worried about the Europeans not realizing the threats and challenges, the responsibility they bear for their own defense. And I would also say that, it seems like business interests and short-sighted national interests come before an understanding that there is a threat to the security and the future of Europe. That's my problem. And I'd also maybe I might want to add that it really makes me worried that I can see that the Europeans don't want to accept the leadership of the United States on this. And at the same time, the United States need to understand, once it acts, then I think other Europeans will follow. But there has to be an action to push back to the aggressive attitudes of Vladimir Putin.
You mentioned a couple of moments ago, thank goodness that we have NATO today. But let's be honest here, Ambassador. Is NATO really any reason, any great panacea here to consider that nothing would happen? Because there are those people in Europe right now who look and they say NATO is toothless. It won't make any difference because nobody has the will to get in here and stop this guy.
Well, once again, first of all, NATO has the capabilities, but it needs a strong political will to do that. I have no doubt that NATO is able to defend its members and will do so if there should be an aggression, a clear-cut aggression against one of its members. My worry is the following. Vladimir Putin might want to do what it did in Ukraine, that it actually attacks the country, but pretends that it's not him. It pretends that it's not the Russians. And my question is, are we ready for an intrusion into our societies our countries by what I would call hybrid warfare, and I'm not sure we're ready for that. That is why it is so extremely important that NATO, it gets prepared and has the necessary, takes the necessary decisions so that when we need to act, we act fast.
I have asked people before on this show, is this the reformation of the Soviet Union? And I've had a number of analysts, they quite frankly have chuckled a little bit at that. They said, absolutely not, that can't happen. This is 2015, there's too many other things involved here. Are they being naive or are they correct?
I think they're being naive.
Why?
I think they're being naive because what we are seeing now is we have accepted that after the changes in 89-90, we give up the idea of sphere of influence. We have embarked upon the acceptance that any nation, any country that wants to be a democracy, that has accepted the rule of law, transparency in the way it runs the country, should be able to do that. The Russians have reverted to the sphere of influence idea. What is happening in Ukraine is really the idea that I have my sphere of influence and you have no business in my sphere of influence. You have gone too far into my sphere of influence. And I think that is unacceptable. And I think those who are understanding to Vladimir Putin are actually supporting the idea of sphere of influence. We need to leave that behind us, and we need to stand firm that a country, if it wants to be a democracy, we should help it become a democracy.
I've only got about 35 seconds left here. In your opinion, the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, what needs to happen to at least slow this down and eventually stop it?
Well, we need to, first of all, I think Europe needs to face the fact that there is a growing anti-Semitism, and we need to make sure there is no misunderstanding that anti-Semitism has many faces, and we should understand what is the result of the fact that some countries have not faced the past, their responsibility for the Holocaust, and some other countries where is a totally new kind of anti-Semitism that have come with extremist Islam. These are totally different things, but the bottom line is Europeans need to push back on any sign of anti-Semitism, and there is no place for tolerance in this.
Well put. And we have to spend a lot more time on that in the future. Ambassador András Simonyi, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We'll talk again soon.